Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. My name is Adam Asher, and this is The Edge of Adventure. And as you probably know by now, the program is dedicated to those who serve people around the globe, people who perhaps are vulnerable, overlooked, forgotten, suffering, people in need. The podcast, the radio show, and the video series has taken us off the beaten path, off the grid, to some places that are hard to get to, and in countries that are far from here. But this is Thanksgiving. This is an American holiday, and there is much need here too. So I thought it would be fitting if we turned our attention today to an organization that loves and serves those who are suffering from homelessness. As we count our blessings and give thanks this week, as Americans who indeed have so much to be thankful for, let us not forget our brothers and sisters in this country who are suffering, whose lives are not easy. And around the nation today, estimates tell us there's nearly 600,000 nationwide who have no place to call home. So I hope you'll stick around as we get to know Todd Feske, the founder and CEO of Walking with a Purpose Minnesota, a man who knows exactly what it's like to be homeless, and a man who's chosen to live his life in service to others. Welcome to the Thanksgiving edition of the Edge of Adventure podcast. Todd Feske from Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota. Welcome to the program. Great to see you, Todd.
Good to see you, Adam.
Todd, you have this amazing heart for people who are homeless. Tell me about that heart. What are the homeless facing today?
Well, we keep increasing the homeless. I know the stats in Minnesota. We've got about 12,000 homeless people every night, and there's different levels, and we deal with the levels that we call the unsheltered community, the ones that are camping out, and that's been increasing in the last 6 years since I've been doing this. So it's not getting better. We're not solving much. It's actually getting worse.
What have you seen? I mean, you're out there, you meet these people, you see what they're struggling with, you see the pain they're in,
Right.
uh, the things they're doing without. Paint that picture for us. You call them the unsheltered homeless, people who are homeless that literally don't have shelter. Tell us, what's their life like?
Your life is it's a day-to-day existence. All you're thinking about is how you're going to make it every day. And that's why we talk about hope for them, because it's hard to have hope if you don't have dreams. And if you're only thinking about today, you don't have many dreams. And their life is pretty much a day-to-day existence. We're dealing with chronic homelessness out there. These are individuals that have been without shelter for at least a year or 3 or 4 times in the last few years. A number of them do have issues with alcohol, drugs. We have a number of them with mental health issues, physical issues. It's just a wide variety of people out there. There's not one type that really fits the mold.
We're going to talk and get into the details of what Walking with a Purpose Minnesota does. And I think it's a remarkable organization, and you and your team are doing wonderful things. We're going to talk about that. I want to talk about you, though, for a second. You're a guy that likes the outdoors. You like to hike. And this is actually where this purpose that you found for your life, it goes back to that through an experience you had hiking. Tell me about that. Where did this start for you?
About actually 15 years ago, I I had a decision to make. I was getting my car fixed. Go down to my neighborhood bar where I normally would go, or just walk the Red River back. I was living in Fargo Moorhead at the time, back to my home. I decided to walk that river, and it changed my life. I just kept hiking. I loved it. And before I knew it, I quit drinking. And it was my obsession. Um, I used to be 300 pounds. I'm 165 now. So it changed my life that way. But I continued hiking, and I moved about 10 years ago back to St. Paul, which is my hometown. And I started hiking around these areas. And that's when I came across some of the camps, and I kind of knew they were out there and stuff.
So you come across this camp, and it impacted you. It affected you in a way that made you want to do something about it. You wanted to help them in some way.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was actually I looked at it as more of a preparation of towards my purpose. In my own story, I'm an ex-addict, I'm an ex-alcoholic, and it was the hiking that got me off my last addiction of alcohol. Um, so I knew there was a way to change your addiction. I got addicted to hiking, which was a good addiction, and I know that I can bring that on to other people. And these people's stories are a lot of my story. I call it I wandered is what I called it during the 70s. I was 13 when I started hitchhiking around Minnesota. I was 15 when I hitchhiked out to California. I've hitchhiked one end of this country to the other. I was in and out of homelessness a number of times. So I understand them, and that's what they appreciate. We're a private organization. When I go and they know that I understand their story and I'm not trying to sell them on anything, that's where you gain their trust. And that's the most important thing when you're dealing with anybody is gaining their trust.
Todd Feske is my guest today on a very special edition of the Edge of Adventure podcast. And he is the CEO and founder of Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota, learning a little bit about his story and his love for people and this purpose that he found for his life. Let's talk about Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota. What are some of the things or some of the ways that you help the chronically homeless population there in Minnesota?
You know, although we do bring them a lot, I think the biggest thing we bring them is just ourselves. We are out every week seeing pretty much the same people, 75 to 100 people. It varies up and down, but we make a connection with them and we give them personalized service with Walking with a Purpose. When they come into our converted shuttle van, they do what they call shopping. And this thing is loaded with clothes, food, hygiene. We got makeup, we got books, we got coloring books. We got pretty much, it's called a Walmart on wheels. But while they're in there, we're one-on-one. I've got the president of our board, Beth um, Palmadeer. She is my right arm. She's out there with me all the time, and she knows the sizes and the styles of the people. But more importantly, we get to hear their stories, and the things we hear, uh, they can be heartbreaking and they can be uplifting. Just yesterday, we found three of our people are going inside. That's good news. But in the same sense, we also find out other ones have been beaten and raped. This is a continuation of our weekly journey out there. The stories I've come across vary immensely to 2 years ago when we found Melanie Pink passed away in her tent from carbon monoxide poisoning. That was the winter when it got to 40, 50 below here. So we see all kinds of suffering, but in that too, we do see joy in their lives. We celebrate their birthdays with them, and we celebrate when they're going in. I've had a number of them where we've had to celebrate the birth of their child. Some have been able to keep them, some not. It's it's kind of an amazing thing, and it's something that when people come out and see it, it changes them.
And you guys are out, I think you said at least twice per week, rain or shine, doesn't matter what the temperature is, doesn't matter what the conditions are, you're out at least twice a week?
Yeah, we've got what I call my mandatory Tuesday, which is that's the first day I ever went out was a Tuesday, and I kept going, and we do about 10, 12 stops. Yesterday, I think we did 50, 60 people at those stops. And I figure that they don't get to choose the weather. We don't get to have a day where we can go, well, we can go on Wednesday. So we're out there. And then we do our Thursday night where we're in a certain spot, which has a lot of camps in the area. And it's more convenient for them and us just to come down there. They know where we're going to be. Anybody that knows us knows on that night we're going to be at that spot no matter what. We were out when we were getting that 40, 50 below weather. Me and my volunteers were out all three of those days. We were out there. We brought 26 people in. We raised the money for that, and my volunteers were there 3 times a day feeding them. And the amazing effect you get when you come across a tent, it's 50 below, they don't know you're coming. and you hear them crying and praying for help, and you have the opportunity to tell them to get the hell out of that tent and come in someplace warm where they'll be taken care of. And that actually leads into something that we can get into, I think, a little bit about Dave and Laura, a couple that the church refused to bring back out there. Now, for 2 years, they've been taken care of, and they're now in a trailer out at an RV park. So,
All right. Well, tell me about that. What's the situation with David and Laura?
David and Laura were a couple, and when the church that was helping feed, once the days were over and it was only getting to 20 below, which is normal for around here in the Twin Cities in the winter, they were going to bring them back out to the camp. And in these 3 days, they got to know this couple, and they got to know some of the issues they had, but they just couldn't turn their back on them. So they says, well, we can pay for a motel room for a few more days. They went back to the church, and they actually raised money to get them a trailer. So, and this church is taking care of them. They've gotten, David's needed surgery, Laura's needed help, but it was a turn of their heart. They just couldn't say, here, go back out in 20 below weather. It was true compassion, not only feeling the pain, but doing something about it.
Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota. We have Todd Feske joining us today for the Edge of Adventure podcast. Getting to know Todd, getting to know this remarkable organization that works in and around St. Paul, Minnesota. So, Todd, one of the awesome things that we have got to share with the audience today is this vision that you had, and I think it was an idea probably that you I don't know, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, something like that, maybe longer, you started on it, but it's actually coming to pass. You've got tell us about the tiny homes and how you have actually got some of them funded, being constructed, being built. Fantastic vision, fantastic thing. Tell us about the tiny homes.
Actually, it goes back to the beginning now, over 5 years ago. When I first went out and started doing my mission, I was very small, a couple bins in my own camp or my own van. Um, but when I started doing research into homelessness and stuff, I started to come across what's called housing first, homes first. And part of that solution was tiny homes. And that intrigued me because it's a solution where our shelters are a band aid. These are actual homes that they can live in forever. They don't have to leave. There's not restrictions on how long you can stay in these. And the first thing I did back in 2015 is I went out to a model one in Madison, Wisconsin that had three actual ones built and lived in. And my main concern was how was the neighborhood perceiving this? Because one of the biggest problems to solving homelessness is the NIMBY, the not in my backyard problem. I got there, I saw this beautiful village. It was an old 1950s era gas station that they were able to convert and build them there. And I saw a plaque on the wall that they just got from the neighborhood association, along with a $5,000 grant for being such a positive influence on the neighborhood. And that really let me know that this does work. And that's part of what the idea is we're talking about creating a community. There's one in Austin, Texas, that is a 250 unit place that is built with 20% of the people that live there are the counselors, the mentors, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. The project we have going now, and as I speak there out at a church in St. Paul here, building, 3 churches are sponsoring 3 tiny homes. These are on wheels, and that's to get over building codes. And they're building them right now. And the church that we're looking at having 6 of these, with 4 of them for which will soon be formerly homeless, and then 2 for mentors. I myself am looking at being one of those. So, but this is something that works. We have people, each person that lives in these will have support directly for them. And we can do this anywhere in the country through what we call LUPA, which is the Religious Land Right Act, which allows us to use church property for their mission.
So, Todd, Does that mean then that you're looking actively to expand this beyond St. Paul? What would be the timetable in that
Yes,
regard? And of course, also, what type of support do you need? You mentioned churches coming alongside you guys.
exactly.
Is that key to being able to grow it in St. Paul and then
Right.
taking it elsewhere?
It is. Texas is one of the few states that where in counties there are no building codes. So this is why that village was allowed to happen. Most states, the counties have building codes and city have building codes. Minnesota, you cannot build anything under 400 square feet. But then you have cities that even impose larger square feet, 2,000 or more, and that is basically to keep out low income housing. Um, and one of the things that we found is that as we what we call affordable housing, which is really taxpayer subsidized housing, the national average on per unit is $250,000. That's because of all the regulations, all the government agencies you have to go through. It just goes on and on. Um, we're working with a mobile unit, kind of like under the RV category. These do not have plumbing. They will have electricity and the like, but they will not have plumbing. That's why with the churches, those will have the facilities for the bathrooms, the showers. They'll have a community kitchen for everybody because we are creating a community. And like I said, one of the biggest problems is the NIMBA. People really are afraid of this type of thing. But because of a decision 2 years ago that was actually made here in St. Paul in federal courts, where a place called the Listening House, which was an organization that allowed homeless people to go during the day because they couldn't be in the shelters during the day, the city tried to impose a limit of 20 people. They took that to federal court, and the federal court pretty much told them to just drop it, pay the attorney fees for the other side, which was a substantial amount, and that under the Religious Land Right Act, as long as it's within the church's mission, they can do what they want on their property. Now we do go in the neighborhood. The church we're going into, we've had multiple neighborhood meetings. We go out and have prayer meetings in the neighborhood with them, and it's an amazing thing that happens. So I'm working with the University of Minnesota Center for Design and the two people that founded that, Gabrielle um, and Joe. They're just phenomenal people, and their vision is to have this all over.
We are talking today with Todd Feske, the CEO and founder of the of Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota. This, of course, is the Edge of Adventure podcast and a very special edition. And it's just great to have Todd on the show and to hear about his heart. If you're watching this, of course, we have the audio version. Many of you are listening to the audio version of the podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts and Google and Spotify and Stitcher and basically pretty much anywhere. So if you're listening that way, it's great to have you. As a radio guy, I love the audio podcast, but I also like the video podcasts that we do, and you can get them on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I like that because you get to meet the person, you get to see him, you can take a look here at this wonderful guy Todd as we get to know him. But I'm also going to share some pictures. And while I ask him this question, and I know it's an important word for him, this particular word, it's an important word for him. He built it into the name of his organization, and he's already mentioned it several times in this interview. But I want to ask him about his purpose and what it means to him to have found this purpose here at this time. I'm going to show some pictures that come from their Facebook site, which you can look them up on facebook.com/walking with a purpose MN, which is from Minnesota. So be sure you do that. But as I share the image here, Todd, I'll be sharing some of these. Tell me about the importance of your purpose and what it means to feel like you've found it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. This actually goes back, I won't go too far into it, but it goes back even further into a lot of thought and transitions as I got over my different drug addictions and dealing with alcohol. And a lot of it had to do with prayer. And the funny thing is, a lot of my prayers are being answered, and it was confusing. But I get 20 some years ago, I got at 59 and a half, everything will make sense. You'll find your purpose. It'll make sense. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to that, but it kept going and going. And when I really started doing this, I questioned it. Is this something I'm supposed to do? I kind of knew the first day I went out that this was probably going to change my life, but you're not sure. I just wasn't sure if this was it. And once I'd been out for a few months, I realized that when I went out for the first time in December of 2014, I was 59 and a half. That was a lot of few other things that came. I knew that this was what my purpose was. And as I met the people in their stories or my stories, I knew that that's why I went through a lot of what I had to go through. And like I tell people, I spent a number of years just walking the hell of it. And now I walk for a purpose. I have a reason to be out in those woods. And it just, I, I, I first wanted to help people and maybe make some friends doing it. And I cannot, you never know how much you help people, but I do know I've made a lot of great people doing this. And that's what the really reward is. It's not just the people that I'm helping, but it's my volunteers and my donors that come through. Uh, it's an amazing blessing. That's all I can do.
But you've also alluded to this, Todd. There's also a stigma, or for many, a desire to look the other way, look away from this problem. Um, what does that feel like to those who are struggling when they know in their heart that people are looking away?
When I talk to them, and that's what you get from the people that are out, flying the signs out there with their signs and stuff. And I get a lot of people asking me, what should I do? Should I give them money? How do I know? And the first thing you should always remember, when you give up yourself, you give up your heart. You don't question where it's going. I don't care if it's a homeless person or another charity. If you're going to give to them, you don't question it that way. But a lot of what they tell me, what hurts them, it is the looks and the remarks that people say to them, and more than not giving them something. And a number of these people are very, very well, good-hearted people, and they would never hurt anybody, and they're just stuck in their world, and they've been there. Some of the people I deal with for decades. And if you don't want to give it, that's your decision. But to sit there and say something or give them a dirty look, that's not empathy for your neighbor. I mean, it should be, I think it was Lincoln said empathy for all and malice towards none. But that would hurt anybody to get those looks at any point in your life, especially when you're suffering. Just trying to get a meal out there.
We tend to think of the good things in our lives preparing us for our purpose. Is it possible that the suffering or the things that we might classify as negative experiences in our life, can those also prepare us for a very important purpose in life later on?
I believe that's true. I believe we all have a path in life, but it is filled with detours and byways and forks in the road, and we never know which one's going to take us in a different direction. The one thing I always had was support. I did have a brother where I knew I could always, go to and stuff. And I always believed in myself. I always knew I could get out of my situation if it got too bad. And I was lucky enough to do it without having to seek help. I was, I guess, fortunate to do it that way. But support's a big thing. And that's what we have found with a lot of the people we deal with is they've lost that part of their life. They don't have anybody to fall back to anymore. And once you get that, you really have nothing. Large percentage of the people we deal with have gone through the foster care program. Once they age out, there's really no help for them when things do go bad. There's a number. We found a lot of the things that cause homelessness, if you want to call it that, have to do with early childhood development. And I think there's 8 or 10 different things that It can traumatically impact your childhood. But then beyond that, it's the response you get when you try to correct those bad things, when you try to go on and do something, and if you get a negative or positive response on that. And that's why two people in a seemingly similar situation can end up in different situations. One could have a positive response to the negativity, the other one could have a negative response, which drove them further down.
Walking with a Purpose, Minnesota, getting to know Todd Feske today. Todd, what do you need from the people? How can people help you? Maybe for those in the Minnesota area, but even those outside that area, what can they do to help you, or what can they do in their own communities to help the people who are struggling with chronic homelessness?
One of the main things I tell people, if nothing else, just let us do what we need to do. Don't stand in our way. If a lot of people don't agree with us helping the homeless. They think we're enabling. And if you ever come out with me, you'll find I don't enable anybody. We have rules, and we do, and they do follow them, and they understand that stuff. So we're not just out there throwing stuff out on the ground. But in your own community, well, right away, we're talking about we need churches to help us with this tiny home issue. We can do this anywhere. And that's the idea. Everybody, a lot of people in this area think, well, it's a St. Paul or Minneapolis problem. That's where most of the homeless are. Well, yeah, but they're coming from rural Minnesota because they come here because this is where the services are. So it's not an urban problem per se. It is a statewide problem. We just absorbed uh, the majority of the people. We would rather have them back in their own hometown, in their own community, in a tiny home on church property, so that they are supported by their friends and family as they can be and stuff. So that's an important thing. On the individual part, what I do, and I always have a bag in my car with water, pair of socks, something to eat in there. Up here, hand warmers in the winter. I don't give out money, but I will feed anybody I see on the side of the street working in the hot weather or cold weather, and that's what they're doing. So be kind to them. Supporting things like Walking with a Purpose. We're always looking for financial help. We need 150 to 200 pairs of socks every week. It's the most requested, least donated item. I cannot tell you the hundreds of batteries, candles, hand warmers, and all we go through. So that's great. Or in your own community, we didn't get into. I started this by answering a list, an ad on Facebook that said gather stuff for the homeless. It was during Black Friday. While you're shopping, you can either drop it off, we'll give it to a shelter, or you can distribute it. I want to distribute it. I don't have much. I want to see what's going to. I thought I was going to join other people. My response was, you just made the hardest decision. You decided to do something. Go do it. And I did. And that's my challenge, just to go do something. I believe if you find your passion, it'll take you to your purpose.
Todd, of course, we're headed into the holiday season. And this, of course, is a very special edition of this podcast. And I wanted to talk about this in particular as we head into Thanksgiving and we head into Christmas holiday time. It's a time where probably people are more prone to think about those struggling with homelessness. Okay. But you have reminded people who follow your platform, you've reminded me that it's important that it's good to remember those struggling with homelessness at the holiday time. But it breaks their hearts when you get on the other side of the holidays and then they're forgotten. Um, what's your word to the people regarding that right now?
Yeah, I like to answer that one with something that one of my volunteers once asked in the beginning here a few years ago. It was middle of winter, and we came across Ron. And if you ask Ron how long Ron's been homeless, he'll just simply say, longer than anybody else out here. And my volunteer said, geez, it must really suck to be out here in the winter. And Ron looked at him and said, you know, It's easier to get warm than it is to get cool. It sucks all year. And that's something we have to remember. It isn't just winter that they suffer. I come out those tents in 90-degree weather with high humidity, and well, I've seen some things I really don't want to see because it's hot in those tents and stuff. And around here, the spring and fall is wet. We're dealing with the mud, humidity, it's a mold and stuff. And of course, once again, the summer, you got mosquitoes, you got poison ivy, spider. It's just, it never ends. The need doesn't just end because we started a new year and stuff. It continues. It's day by day by day.
All right. Thanks for joining me today. I've got one last question for you on this special edition of the Edge of Adventure podcast. Todd, what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for the blessings I receive to do God's will. It's pretty much that simple. I gave him my will in those woods one day, and he's guided me this whole way. He's brought me into some amazing people, and I, along with the homeless, along with my volunteers and my donors, it's an amazing group of people I would have never got to know if I wouldn't have gone down this path, if I wasn't led down this path. I'm just thankful for the blessings I receive.
Well, I'm thankful for you, Todd, and appreciate your time today. I'm thankful for your heart for the people. Um, I I admire anybody who gives of themselves to help those who've been marginalized, those who perhaps have been forgotten by many. I find that inspiring. I'm thankful for people like you who work hard to take care of others. So as we look ahead to the holiday season, into the year ahead, I hope people will remember your organization and the people you love and help so much. And again, it's been great to have you on the show today. My guest for the Edge of Adventure podcast today has been Todd Feske. He is the CEO and founder at Walking with a Purpose in Minnesota, and they are dedicated to helping the unsheltered and chronically homeless. And one of the things I liked about the interview today is him pointing out that he's after not just a temporary help, but also permanent solutions for these wonderful people. Look them up online at walkingwithapurpose.org. That's walkingwithapurpose.org. You'll also find them on Facebook. Just do a search. You're looking for Walking with a Purpose Minnesota. And that Minnesota, of course, can be abbreviated MN as you look them up on Facebook. And other than that, Todd, I just, again, appreciate your time and wish you all the best and really have an appreciation for your heart and your service.
Well, thank you for what you do, Adam. Getting the word out is important. I appreciate it.
Well, God bless you. And we're thankful for you and for all those who follow us here on the podcast. And my encouragement and admonition is if you've got a heart for this kind of work and serving these types of people, get in touch with Todd. Simply look him up and get in touch with them via his website at walkingwithapurpose.org. And of course, he needs your help. He needs your partnership. So look him up and encourage him and his wonderful team. God bless you, Todd. We'll talk again soon. And thank you again for what you do.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
This has been the Edge of Adventure podcast, a very special edition. We're thankful for you all.